Well, I hope everybody had a good 4th of July blowing crap up. Um, I've entitled today's video A New Discovery. And it's amazing after all these years that I could find, a new puzzle piece. It's nothing earth shattering, but it's, something that you might be interested in. Um, and well, let's get into it. So it kind of fits nicely with the last video I put out. Um, so talking about Ron Logan's flip phone in his pocket. Um, so here we have Ron Logan um, walking down his hill. He's on his flip phone. You can see his flip phone right here, and he's left-handed, so he's got it in his left hand. Here's his fanny pack. I've talked about that a little bit in the past, but this is his backup fanny pack. He threw away the brown one that he wore on the bridge. This one also has a shoulder strap, like the other one. Um, so, uh, but something I didn't discover until this last week was this. Um, you can see Ron's flip phone in his pocket. And notice it's in his right front pocket, just like it was on the bridge, because that's where he keeps it. He's left-handed, and it makes sense for a left-handed person to keep it on that side. And you really don't see his flip phone um, until right toward the end of the interview. He's got his hand in his pocket, and he pushes the flip phone outward right at the end of the interview, and then you can see the outline of his flip phone. And I show that just to, now I know he's the rich guy, but I'm sure many, there's a lot of people who don't know that, and might, you know, doubt the whole, flip phone in this pocket. Um, but in fact, Ron Logan does keep his flip phone in that pocket, and so it's remarkable that just after all these years, it's just in the last week. This is another piece of the puzzle that I've been able to put together. Um, I kind of got obsessed with this case from the very beginning, and I've spent so many hours studying the images and studying this case. It's kind of embarrassing, to be honest with you. I could have been a doctor by now if I would have spent that time, you know, going to school. But it's been worth it. I've enjoyed this process. I've looked into other cases as well, but this was the first one that really hooked me and obsessed me, and it's so tragic and and you know so awful, but at the same time, um, I I've just wanted everyone to find closure and to know who was responsible for this, and that's what's driven me to this point, is just the desire for people to know who it was, and especially after they arrested Richard Allen, knowing he's completely innocent of this, that just propelled me even harder and farther to find more evidence that it wasn't him and that it was in fact Ron Logan. So that's kind of a little bit of history um, from me. The next topic is, this is Connie Dolan's interview, um, and um, she said I talked to two FBI agents for a good hour. I said, "This is who killed Abby and Libby. This is your bridge guy." And that's Ron Logan. So she was adamant that it was Ron Logan. She knows it's him. She knows the voice. She knows that that's what he wore and what he looked like. But she also knew his character. And she said in a previous interview that, well, he finally did it. And she knew he was quite capable of doing something like this. It didn't surprise her at all that he had done this. But so she said, I talked to two FBI agents. So the FBI was the one that interviewed her. ISP never interviewed her, to my knowledge, or Carroll County Sheriff's Department. Um, but the FBI was a little more open-minded, and uh, and it's telling that it took FBI agents to interview her. Um, it's telling to me that they spent more time trying to actually solve this case, whereas the ISP, they just got closed-minded. They said, "Well, he's too old to do something like this." Well, last year they had two 70-year-olds go on murder sprees out in California. I mean, um, just because he was 77 doesn't mean he's not capable of, you know, committing this crime. Um, so the FBI was a lot more open-minded, and look, they didn't just eliminate him because he's too old, which in fact is what happened with the ISP, I believe. Um, Speaking of the FBI and Carroll County, the FBI put all this effort into writing the search warrant for Ron Logan's house. Um, but notice how they weren't involved in the search, the actual search of his house. Carroll County Sheriff's Department was um, control freaks. You know they really didn't want the FBI even involved, and certainly shut them out of this search warrant. I'm sure they told Ron, "Hey, we're just going to poke around in your house a little bit. Don't worry. We're not going to disturb anything, and then we'll get out of your hair." Um, I, I'm sure that's how it went down. So look, we have a conservation officer. I'm sure he's well versed on how to do a proper search warrant for a double murderer. Um, Here you've got Indiana State Police cars, but I don't see any FBI. And so they were kind of shut out of this process, even though they were the ones that did all the work to get the search warrant. Um, they they're just dealing with a bunch of control freaks that wanted, that were closed-minded and decided there's no way a 70-year-old man can commit murder, and that's just ridiculous because he did. Um, what's a little upsetting to me is that if the FBI were to have carried out that search warrant, I know they would have come away with um, ample photographic evidence. They would have photographed everything in that house. And they didn't know exactly what they needed to photograph, but they would have photographed everything in that house. And it turns out, I know they would have had a photograph of Ron Logan's water bottle. I don't believe Ron Logan threw away his water bottle after after the murders. He definitely threw away his jacket and his fanny pack and pants and shoes and all that. But he kept his hat. He wore his hat the next day. So he didn't throw away everything. He might have even kept his um, winter camo hoodie, which would be easy to match to this image. But you know, I really believe he would have kept his water bottle as well. He could have washed it off. And so the FBI would have had, uh, you know, evidence of of his water bottle. I've asked the tip line if to look through the images of what they do have and see if they can find his water bottle. But to be honest with you, I doubt they took pictures of everything. Um, he also likely would have kept these binoculars. Um, yes, they're sticking out. You can see they're sticking out of his pocket, and they could have gotten some blood on them. But again, he could have washed them off, and likely has had kept these binoculars as well. And so, again, I'm pretty convinced that Carroll County does not have pictures of his binoculars or his water bottle, which, but, their controlling nature just, kept pushing the FBI off of the case. They tightly kept control of the case. Finally, just pushed the FBI out altogether. Um, okay. The next little topic I have is something that Ron Logan had said. That's interesting to me. He said, two young kids playing, thinking of having a wonderful day, Valentine's Day, and ends up in one of the largest tragedies in Carroll County history. Well, two young kids playing, and then he says Valentine's Day. They weren't killed on Valentine's Day. They were killed the day before Valentine's Day. Yes, they were found on Valentine's Day, but Ron Logan had a propensity to lie in everything he says. It is a lie. But he took joy in inserting Valentine's Day in there. And this isn't the only time he did it. There's another interview where he talks about how Valentine's Day will never be the same. Um, you know, and he took joy in the fact that people would remember these murders and on Valentine's Day, and I think he was envious that other people could have a Valentine, and he was incapable of it because he was such a mean and terrible person. But he took a little bit of joy, especially in the other interview that I listened to, that him talking about how Valentine's Day will just never be the same. You can see the little joy he had in his eye talking about that. But yeah, Ron Logan um, was a prolific liar, and I've known a psychopath. Um, about 1 to 2% of the population are psychopaths. So more than you would think. In fact, if you were to go in a Walmart, someone in there statistically is a psychopath. And so it's a little more common than you would think. And psychopaths can look you right in the eye and lie to you and almost believe their lie. Even though they know it's a lie, you know it's a lie, but they'll still look you right in the eye and tell you that lie. And I and Ron Logan definitely was a psychopath, and he had no problem lying about everything. Um, the next topic I have is when they found the bodies. There was some people that were across the creek that looked over and saw some clothing, apparently, and yelled across the creek for someone to come over and have a look. And so this is in the interview where the two women recorded their conversation with Ron Logan, if you've heard that. But so apparently Pat Brown, a neighbor of Ron Logan, was one of them that came over to look at these, the behest of these people shouting across the creek. And Ron Logan said he went down over the hill, he being Pat Brown, he went down over the hill and he saw me. And they were right out in the open. I don't understand why they didn't find them the night before. Well, he knows why they didn't find them the night before, because he didn't let anybody look for them on his property. But the main point of what I'm trying to say here is when he says he went down over the hill and he saw me. So Ron Logan was sitting out or standing out, watching the bodies and waiting to see if they'd been discovered. Because Pat Brown saw him after he went down over the hill. He didn't see him, he wasn't up at his house. He saw him after he went over the hill. So Ron Logan was in eyesight of the bodies because he just couldn't take it. It was tearing him up, not knowing if they were found or not. So that's why he was out there. Now, unfortunately, I had a student of mine die recently, and but I didn't know who it was. I was just informed that it was a student, and I didn't find out for a few hours who it was, and it really tore me up, just not knowing. And so Ron Logan, likewise, just not knowing if they'd been discovered or not, he had to sit out there and watch and find out when they had been discovered. And so by him saying, "and he saw me," that tells you, and he wasn't out looking for the bodies. He didn't, or the girls, I should say. He didn't look the night before. Don't believe for a second that he was out looking for the girls, because he wasn't. He was waiting to know when they'd been discovered. The last little thing I wanted to touch on was years ago. Law enforcement put out the fact that the girls were wet when they found them, and they'd obviously been washed off. We know that anyway, because Abby had no blood on her at all, so we know they were washed off. So the question is, and this is hard to talk about because this whole case is so tragic, but Abby would have taken a long time to bleed out, and which means, he would have had to have washed her off after she bled out completely. So it would have taken a lot of hours. So the only way that could have happened is if somebody came back at night, like Ron Logan did, and washed off the bodies at night. And there was some orange cleaner that was found which would kill, apparently has chlorine in it, would kill like any DNA that might be left on the bodies. He might have used creek water as well, but it tells me that it was someone who came, later on, came prepared, whether it was creek water or whether it was the orange cleaner, but he had to have brought something to wash the bodies with. Had to be prepared to do that, and so it's the only way it could have happened, and in fact, it is what happened. we know that Ron Logan came that evening from his cell phone pings, um, and and washed the bodies, at least certainly Abby. And to me, that's just um, you know, there's no way that Richard Allen could possibly have been the killer, and law enforcement must know that. And his lawyers brought that up. There's no way it could have been. It could have happened in such a short time frame. All right, that's all I had for today. Thank you for joining me, and I hope we learned something.